Hey everybody, it's Rob from Frontline Mindset with National Fire Radio. Got another episode today. I got a very special guest on. All my guests are special, but this one comes from the north of New York State, actual upstate New York. I have Captain Sean Eagan from the Buffalo Fire Department with me today. We're going to be talking about a bunch of different topics, so stick around. This one's going to be good. Sean, thank you for coming and joining me today. How are you doing?
Good, Rob. Thanks for having me on. I've been looking forward to this. We've been a couple weeks in the making here, and finally got to sit down.
Yeah. So I want to kind of jump right into it, Sean, and just kind of hit on your story really quickly. Can you kind of share the journey that got you into the fire service and what led you to join the Buffalo Fire Department? Was it 26 years ago, 27 years ago?
27, yeah. I'm just about April. I finished 27. So, well, it's a funny story. The story is there. Excuse me. Sorry about that. There isn't a story, right? My dad told me, "Hey, you're taking this test, and that's that, right?" So, I was the test I took would have been somewhere around 93-ish, 94, and I was in college. My dad was still alive, and he was always hey, take these civil service tests. You gotta take these civil service tests. You're crazy if you don't take these civil service tests. I had my what would become my future brother-in-law was a police officer, and I know this is gonna be, please don't revoke my Maltese cross. I really wanted to be a cop when I was younger. I said that years ago in a podcast, and I felt like I got some shade, but it was, I wised up,
Yeah.
So I was really pushing. We used to have the Buffalo police exam hadn't hit, but there was the housing police. So it was, it was the Buffalo Municipal Housing Authority Police Department. I did take their test, and then my dad came home from work, and he's like, I signed you up for the fire exam. And I go, well, how the hell did you do that? Don't you need my signature or something? And he's like, you're all signed up. My dad was a city official when he was alive, and excuse me, you know how that goes. Unfortunately, he passed before he was able to help me actually get the job. But so I don't know where I got this tickle all of a sudden, Rob. But so, anyways, fast forward a couple of years. That list, lucky for me, they did a big mass hiring. So they hired 2 or 3 classes in 96, 2 classes in 97, 1 class in 98, my class, 1 class in 99, smaller class in 2000, and then a small class in 2002. So it was like the reset kind of the department. And it was the first time they did this band scoring instead of a straight up list where, I'm number 1, you're number 2. They kind of put you in an A band and a B band. And it was at whoever's discretion who got what. So even when I was sitting there at the table getting interviewed, because my place was there, the guy telling me, he's like, you're not going to get the job. You're not going to get the job. You're not going to get the job. So I was, by the time I got hired, my wife and I, current wife, we weren't married yet, but we had our oldest son. And I was working for the auto industry at a local factory, used to be part of the GM plant. And I was making really good money for the time and for my age, but I could kind of see, this is your life type of thing. This isn't a dress rehearsal here. This is forever. So when my foreman at the plant, actually his daughter-in-law at the time was a payroll clerk for the fire department. So I'm running my machine. I got earplugs in, and I'm doing my thing, and he's making all this ruckus in the background. I'm like, what the hell's the matter with you? And he's like, oh, you're going to be a fireman, huh? And I go, what are you talking about? So he was the one that actually kind of told me that I was in line for the job. And luckily, shortly after, actually the academy started the Monday after Easter in 1998. And we found out that we were getting in on Saturday. The day before Easter, we got a letter in the mail.
Yeah, sounds about right.
Yeah, be there Monday. Oh, and by the way, you need to wear this, you need to wear that, you need to wear boots with all black boots with black laces with a lug sole, no color, and it's Holy Saturday and nothing's open. So, but and that was it. I never really had any reservations about it, simply because I needed the job. And by the time I got hired, my brother-in-law, my sister Mary's brother, had gotten on. He's a few years older than me, but he kind of did the second career. They lived in Chicago and they moved back here, and he got hired in '93. So by this point, I kind of knew a little bit about the job a little bit more. Between him and my brother-in-law, who was a police officer, they both were like, "You're crazy if you don't." Basically, like, "You're crazy if you don't do it. You're crazy if you don't do it." And so I did, and I took a risk because you're on probation for 18 months. I had a young, so
Wow.
when I got, you're actually, my probation was only a year. It's 18 months now, but so Quinn would have been just over a year old when I was starting the academy. So, there's a lull where I left the job I was working. It takes 30 days or 60 days for your health insurance to kick in. You're making a lot less money, and it's the most physically demanding thing I've ever done in my life, So luckily I was 23, and I was able, I would be lying if I said I was in the best shape of my life at the time, because, I had a factory job, and had a young kid, and it was, what every person that age does. It was out partying on the weekends or whatever, and so it was a real shock to the system. The academy was, for sure, and but that's it. I tell you, almost, like I said, just 27 years later, I can't imagine doing anything else. The staring down, 5 years or so to retirement, I'm just like, where the hell did the time go?
Yeah.
But I didn't really have the story that a lot of your guests have, where it was in the blood. My dad wasn't on the job. Like I said, my brother-in-law was, but he was only on for a couple years before I got hired. And I was a city kid. I lived in the city my whole life. So it wasn't like I knew, there's this old newscaster in Buffalo Buffalo's Blaze Busters were at it again. Like, he was all, so I always knew the story, and I knew, but I didn't know anything about the job per se, and so it was like that whole, that old saying that, if you're going to jump in with both feet and see what happens. And like I said, I can't imagine my life if I didn't,
Yeah.
Because as you probably assume, the factory the factory I was working at is now defunct. It was, like I said, it was a company that bought out one of the GM plants, and they've been out of business for damn near 20 years now. So,
Yeah.
but
So during your career, have you had, you've had to have some defining moments, but have you had any defining moments that have shaped how you lead as a captain?
Yeah. There's been those moments, and this isn't to throw shade at anybody that I used to work for if they happen to listen, but for a stretch of my career as a firefighter, as a young firefighter, I had some amazing officers, and I had some, for lack of a better word, like turds, right? Like,
Yeah.
there was, and it was difficult for me to like not fall into that mindset of, well, I know more than this guy. You know what I mean? So the defining moment for me was kind of like, I was at, and I'm not going to mention names, but I was probably about 5 years or so, 6 years in, and I did a short stint at a really good East Side engine, and my crew was awesome, and my lieutenant was awesome. He was, like the whole firm but fair thing, right? Like, he would criticize you and lay you out and chew you out, but the next breath he's like, but man, that was awesome, wasn't it? You know what I mean? So he was, he kind of laid the groundwork for the firm side of where I'm at today. And then once I was assigned to Truck 6, I had another officer who became, ironically, because when you see the guy or you talk to the guy, and I think you actually met him when you were here, he didn't strike you as like there's people that this is what they do, and there's people that this is who they are. You know what I mean? He was like very much, this is my job, but he was freaking good at it. And he was the cavalier one that always pissed off the chiefs and always, but so to kind of find that middle ground between the two of them kind of shaped how I was as an officer. And I've said this on shows with Jeremy before, like when I first got promoted lieutenant, I wish I could go back and have a do-over, because I made a lot of mistakes, not necessarily tactical mistakes, right? It was people mistakes, things that the whole, like, you know, your bars hit you thing. And it was, I was a veteran. I mean, I had 16 years on when I became an officer. So, but two officers early in my career kind of shaped this guy's kind of scares me a little bit, and this guy kind of scares me a little bit different. I want to be a blend of the two. So I want you to understand that this can be the most fun we ever have when it's time to be having fun, but when it's time to, like, buckle down, let's buckle down. And so I don't necessarily point it to, you know, a moment, but there was, once I was an officer, we had a pretty bad fire early on. I was probably a lieutenant just over a year, and I was at Truck 7 as a lieutenant, and we had a really, really good fire. And I talked about this at every class I ever did, like at FDIC or Firehouse or any of those. And it really was one of those things where I took me and my crew made a grab early, little boy, like 4 or 5 years old. But 4 people died, and we lost the house. And I really reflected back, like, I mean, I did a deep dive into that fire, like what could have done different, what mistakes did I make, what mistakes did, and it really, like, turned me into, I'm never gonna let that happen again. Now, you know, I know people die in fires all the time and things like that, and I don't know what I figured out throughout my whole, like, deep dive was, I don't know if anything could have necessarily been done differently that was going to save the people that ended up dying. But it was a constant, like, you know, we're here talking about the frontline mindset. It was like that white belt mentality that, like, I developed that through all these years where I never know enough. I never am satisfied. I always want to learn. There's, you know, we had a good fire, 2 fires yesterday when I was working. They were on the west side, but that's where my guys are. So I can't wait to have the conversation with the crews that were working and see how it went. Now, Truck 4, my company, the first platoon was working Sunday and yesterday. Sunday and yesterday, they made grabs at fires. Like,
that's
legit,
awesome.
like, super cool. Like, Sunday was early in the morning, 10 o'clock in the morning or so. And then yesterday was evening time. And, you know, like, I don't know. Again, like we talked about off the air, I went off the rails here, but
No,
like,
listen.
you're who you are, like, your defining moment is evolving, I think, constantly, you know. Like, I just think I never had a real close call personally, knock on wood, that changed it. It was basically just, I'm not satisfied with this. I don't ever want to have that happen again, or I don't ever want to be. I don't want to be my jump seat firefighter like I was going, God, I wish I didn't have to work for this guy. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
100%. I think we've all had those officers, and we've had the ones who've put that, you know, foundation really is what it comes down to, I think, of who we want to be as we promote.
Yeah.
And we've seen, definitely, I think the fire service is good at one thing, and it's providing bad examples of what not to do. And then it provides us some real good gems of what to do. So,
100%. 100%.
In the past 2 decades, how have you seen the job change in Buffalo?
Well, so basically we did a 180-degree change. So when I got hired, like I was saying earlier, it was a big mass hiring. Mm-hmm. So we reset the department from 96 to 2002. We hired, I'm spitballing, say 400 people.
Okay.
And then they didn't hire from 2002 to 2009. So you had the guys still, the folks, men and women, doesn't matter. When I say guys, I'm not being specific. But when I got hired, that were still hanging around from the late 70s to early 80s, when the city was, like every northeastern city in the country, was burning like hell. And then you had our group that were coming in, and what we were doing was slow to them, but we were still going to more fires than most, And
Yeah.
so we had a weird kind of defining moment with the with the whole culture of the department, because like 2004-ish, the city went basically belly up, and the state put financial control board in, with this group of people who made a ton of money to tell the city how to spend the money that they don't have, which that's a different podcast, I think. But you know what I mean? Like this group came in and they did a wage freeze. And from 2002 till 2013, we didn't get any type of pay raise. Promotions were put on hold for a long time. So a lot of like the go-getters, the gung-ho guys were kind of like, this is bullshit. I'm aggravated. I'm pissed off. I don't want to work, right? Like, screw this. I just going to do my time now and I'm going to get out. Well, fast forward 2009, the next time they hired, so 7-year gap, no hiring, a lot of people retiring, a lot of overtime because there was so many vacancies. They put a big class on in 2009. And then from 2009 till today, we've probably hired, I'm 500, 550. So there's a whole new reset happened. And
Right.
the problem I have, and this isn't going to be popular, but as I get older, my circle gets smaller and more valuable, so I don't care. But like, the problem I have is there was still enough of those, ne'er-do-wells that were hanging around from that rough time to when these new folks started getting hiring, that they kind of infected some of the newer folks. So our culture never really rebounded like I had hoped. And there's still people that, like, listen, there's the guys and gals in our job, they want to go to work. That's not what I'm talking about there. It's just the other, like the negativity is still kind of hanging around sometimes. And
Would you say it's kind of like that whole mindset of, are you, from Joey D, are you on the job? Are you into the job? And you kind of wish there was more people into the job than just on the job.
Yeah. And like I mentioned, I do. And like I mentioned before, like, people are into the job because they want to go to fires. And
right.
I do too. I love going to fires. But fires are 20% or 25% of our responses. 70% are the finger quotes EMS calls, right? So the EMS runs that are people don't like and people are aggravated about, but they're the reason I'm here 27 years later, because the city chose to be an EMS provider. Now, we don't transport. We go, we do what we can do. We're BLS only. We're EMT basics, and we hand them off to AMR and they do the transporting. But, that's the problem, is that, you're into the job only when the job's good. Like, I love going to fires. Well, so do I. But guess what? That person that called 911 needs us. And sometimes listen, I'm not perfect. I get annoyed, like, we were at the same house twice yesterday. And but it is what it is. We get paid well to do what we do. And, like I said, I don't care necessarily if you do what I do, if you're teaching off duty or if you're doing podcasts or writing articles or doing whatever. But when you're there, I need you there. So on the job and into the job are relative. There's extremes to both, right? Like, my lieutenant that I love so much was into the job, but it ended when he walked out the door at the end of the shift. You know what I mean? And that was fine, but there's others that are there now, especially in my opinion, since the schedule changed, we do the 24 hours. I feel like, and this is my personal opinion, that it became a part-time job for some people, because we do 24 on, 24 off, 24 on, and 5 off. So you lose out on a lot of the camaraderie that we used to have. When we were doing days and nights, after the day shift, it was, let's hit the local watering hole for happy hour. Yeah. Have a couple beers that would turn into a few more beers or whatever. And that kind of all went away because of the way our our schedule is now. Like there's a whole platoon that I don't see because of this. The schedule falls. The second platoon, our paths never cross unless I go in off duty.
And I pointed at you when you said that there because, like, I did a retirement party the other day for somebody who just retired. Jim Bruger retired from the city of Poughkeepsie, and we were at this bar, and I was joking with one of the guys, and I was like, "Man, like you guys don't come here for after shift fires because you're on 24s. Like, you used to catch a daytime fire and go to this place and have a couple pops afterwards. And like you said, it went from, happy hour to like maybe a fun evening that we told story, but like everybody bonded over that. And now, and I like the 24s when I worked them, right? Because I'm daytime, I'm riding the desk now, but like, the 3 on in Poughkeepsie we had a 3 on 3 off 3 day shifts, 3 off, 3 night shifts, 3 off.
Oh, okay.
And sometimes I miss that schedule because I feel like it was like you did see all the groups eventually, and it just built that camaraderie up. Like guys had different relief patterns and stuff like that, but it was there was something to be said about it.
There was a lot more. We did basically what New York does. We did 9s and 15s and we did 2 days, 2 nights, off 4. And there was a lot more firehouse banter at the kitchen table. Now, people have been at work for 24 hours in the morning. They want to get the hell out of there.
Right.
There was a lot of relief coming in, for a stretch in my career and at the firehouse I worked at for the lion's share of my career. If you weren't there an hour early, you were a shithead. You know what I mean? So there was that overlap where I come in, I have my gears on the rig, I'm ready to go. And whether you have to leave or not, you're going to finish your workout, you're going to sit down, you're going to shoot the breeze. We're going to, have tell some stories, tell some jokes. But that kind of, that's the one big negative of the 24s, in my opinion. And that kind of makes what we wanted, my vision for what I would like the department to be harder to achieve, just because people have, and these younger guys that got hired, they kind of get paid with right hooks a little bit too. So they all have we had second jobs because a lot of us, because we chose to, because of our time off. The new guys now have to, and it stinks. If I had the answer to it, I'd run for mayor, but I don't. It's hard. So I understand that these guys are leaving the firehouse and going right to work for 5 straight days of their other job. And so it's not a criticism when I say this. It's kind of a pipe dream. Like, I wish things could be different, but
yeah. So from the leadership end of it, as a captain, what are some of the biggest challenges that you face in leading a truck company, specifically in Buffalo?
Okay, so there's a lot, right? And all of it stems to the youth of the department. And I don't mean youth in terms of age, I mean youth in terms of time on. So I'm fortunate, and I preface this by saying that the youngest person on my crew is about to have 9 years on. And that's crazy. So I have two guys with pushing 16 years, a guy pushing 14, and a guy with 9. So it's easy. They've been, and these guys, the crew, I came to them. They were working together for several years, but we have so much turnover. And every September and every March, they put out basically bid sheets where you can ask to transfer. I mean, there's rules of apply, but so basically every 6 months, your crews are turning over. And not that it's any easier on an engine, but on a truck, there's a whole lot of learning that goes on just because of the freelance nature of truck work sometimes. If I have my crew, the current crew that I have right now, I don't even think about those guys. I know that the 2 that aren't with me, if assuming, normal residential fire, the 2 that we split up, I know that they're totally good. But there could be a time when I go into work Friday that I have a couple details from the engine, or I have some new people, and now I have to change the way I operate. And that's one of the challenges. And again, I'm blessed on my truck because I don't deal with it, but a lot of the truck companies in the city have young crews that turn over often. The slower truck companies, have a difficult time keeping people there. So inevitably every 6 months or so, you're turning over, if it's one new person or if it's two new people. And some of them, it's whole crews reset. So the challenge there is, obviously, you're pouring your heart and soul into these folks, and I can't teach you everything I need to teach you in the 6 months I have you, because we only work 8 days a month.
Right.
You know what I mean? So there's your biggest challenge. And the second biggest challenge is, I think people are different now. And I'm not criticizing the generation. I have 4 children that are in the generation. It's not that. It's not that. It's just the way technology is now. You don't have to do the things that I necessarily had to do when I was a kid. You know what I mean? Like, so it just seems like so many simple things are more difficult to explain. You know what I mean? Now, I'm not talking about starting a saw, because listen, I was a city kid. First time I ran a chainsaw was in the academy. You know what I mean? So it's not even that. It's just when you went from an Uber driver, now you become a firefighter. There's different type of, obviously different types of needs and requirements for you to work. So this whole, like, I can't say something to you and have your brain go, hold on, I'm processing this. You know what I mean? I need you. So, like, that's a challenge that we get these kids, and the academy instructors get 12, 13, 14 weeks with them, and then they're unleashed to the wild. And they do a great job, but they're taking, like I said, people that have never done this stuff before, people that are children, people that might have been office people, and they're trying to turn them into firefighters in 12 weeks. And so some get it and some don't, that's the biggest challenge, is the turnover and the youth of the department. And now we have, if 5 years on, you can become a lieutenant. So we have a tremendous amount of young officers, and they're trying, like our department's trying, they go to flip school, so that we do our own, like, first line supervisor program. But that's kind of it in terms of required professional development, because it's just costs too much money. I mean, you work for a career department, everything you do costs money.
Mm-hmm.
And it'd be great if we could go to the Rock and go to flips there, but we'll send 40 people through flip school at a time here. They can't take all of us. They'd have to run a special program just for Buffalo people. And then there's that huge cost of the city sending them, because you still have to get paid, right? If I'm working Monday through Friday, even if I'm at the Rock, 8 to 5 or whatever the hours are, the city still has to pay me, and the city has to put somebody in my seat on the fire truck and home. So, again, if I could win $1 billion in the Mega Million and could solve all the problems with money, things would be great, but we can't,
Yeah, my department was in a leadership position at the time where both the salaries and just they didn't value flips, so I never got to go to flips. It's the one, the career doesn't owe me anything, but it's one of the things where I, after hearing the stories of all the people who had gone to flips, and we finally have gotten back, under myself and the chief now, like, we're getting people back to going to flips again, and thankfully they have that 2-week bridge program, but like, it's something that we didn't get to do, and it's you have to build it up. So
and I never did it either, and I've never heard one person say it wasn't great.
Right.
The amount of the learning that goes on, and that facility is unbelievable. Obviously, I know you've been there, but yeah,
I've actually never been down, believe it or not.
Oh, no?
I never made it to the Rock.
Okay.
I gotta hit Mickey up and have him hook me up, but
sneak in a suitcase or something to give you a quick tour. But that's the problem, is the turnover is what's happened to us, and we're at that point now where it's about to turn over now. My group is getting to that 30 years, getting to that 32 years, where they're going to start to go. Now, there's probably less than 200 of us, finger quotes, us, left, the folks hired in the 90s. There's just not a lot left. And, you feel you have this, like, I have so much to do to prepare for the next generation. But man, there's just not enough time. And there's a lot of people that are doing, a lot of chiefs on our job, a lot of the people at the training division, they're doing like yeoman's work, trying to get the culture back, trying to say like, you know, like there's the old saying, it's never about safety, it's always about money when you work in a career department. Well, me and you, I think, would agree, and I'll say it on your podcast, that's bullshit, right? Like, right. You know, like ask some of the families of the folks that we've lost, friends that we've lost over the years, if they think that any amount of money is worth it. So, but they're trying.
With that being said, how do you find yourself with the turnover, you know, whether you're facing it in your own company or what you've experienced in the past, but how do you balance being both a mentor and somebody who holds firefighters accountable when you're working with a crew?
That's another good question. You're killing me. You should have sent me these in advance, Rob.
I'm sorry.
I'm just kidding. No, but no, it's funny because yesterday I was working overtime and I had two guys on probation, two firefighters on probation, a firefighter hired in 2020 and a firefighter hired in 21 or 22. So I was there. So the reason I was there is because we allow acting out of title, even though it's technically a violation of state law and all that. But the chiefs made a conscious decision that they're going to fill this seat with a captain because their captain's out. He had shoulder surgery or something, so he's going to be out for a while. And so the balance is, listen, we have a full day of things to do, but I have to focus on these. And the two members is the 4-year senior member is very, very good at what he does for a person with only 4 years on. So the balance is like I can mentor them and teach him to get ready for the next level, but at the same time we're going out and I'm asking the brand new guy who's fresh out of the academy, like, what's your comfort level if I put you behind the wheel? So and I'll tell you what he said. He's like, I'm not ready. And I said, okay, so we're going to go out and we'll go spot some hydrants. We'll go do the fuel run. And we were in charge of the meal, so we'll do the meal run. And it's kind of like, you ever see the movie Rain Man? I'll let you drive slow in the driveway type of thing, right?
Yeah.
But so for him, he's a nervous wreck. And I finally, like, the mentor side of me looks at him across the doghouse. And I said, listen, kid, this isn't the academy anymore. I'm not testing you. I don't have a stopwatch. I just want you to be good. So listen to the words we say and take a deep breath and drive. If you I'm telling you right now, I preface it like this, like, I want you to pull up and I want you to spot that hydrant up there. Like, this building's on fire. We're responsible for water supply. Spot that hydrant with the steamer connection and ready, go. And he's like, well, should I? And I'm like, just go do it. I'm not going to yell at you if you get it wrong. We're going to teach you if you get it wrong. So the new people, you balance the teaching aspect of it. I don't want them afraid to ask questions. I don't want them scared to do what they have to do because they're afraid they're going to make a mistake. And then these folks with a few more years on, I might be a little rougher on them. Okay, Rob, I want you to pull up that building's on fire, spot the hydrant for the steamer, and then I'm going to just shut up. And you're going to do it. And if you get it wrong, I'm like, come on, man, you got to be better than that. So it's a very fine balance. And some firefighters will handle the constructive criticism much better than others, as you know. Mm-hmm. But it's a little bit of it's a fine balance. And I don't know if I actually have it figured out. You know what I mean? Like I say, we had a couple rough calls yesterday, right? And I gravitate towards the two new guys in terms of asking them, hey, how you doing with that? But these other guys are brand new too. So it's hard to stay focused on the crew as a whole versus, and we don't have a formal mentoring program, which is a little frustrating. And a lot of people have talked about it, but, circle back to the last topic. Stuff like that costs money, training, all that stuff. So, it's something I learned from from my friends like you and all the others I've learned over the years, I have asked that question to them, like, hey man, how do you balance this guy kind of stinks, but I need to be able to mentor him and get him better without crushing his soul, So it's a lot of reading,
Yeah.
it's a lot of learning, and it's a lot of listening to podcasts and attending webinars. And mostly what I do now is webinars. I haven't unfortunately, been able to get to too many conferences the last couple of years. Just, life. I have 2 kids in college now, and, so.
So, you talk about working with that new person and allowing them to make the mistake, working with the person who has experience and kind of being a little bit tougher on them, because there's that part of it where like, hey, like you need to be picking this up now. You've been here for, the joke used to be a year and a day, right? But like it's starting to become a little bit more of a reality now.
Yeah.
But with that, like mistakes are learning things. What mistakes have you made in the past that have taught you a valuable lesson? Have you ever had something that you're just like, oh man?
Yeah, kind of like what I was talking about earlier, my first few months, maybe year as a lieutenant, I kind of made some, personnel mistakes, so to speak. And just the way that you go through training and I kind of thought I had this illusion of, well, I'm the lieutenant now. It's on me to change this stuff. So I'm going to go, tighten my shirt and tuck it in and button it all the way up. And I feel like that was a big mistake for me. I hurt a lot, not hurt, but I kind of aggravated and alienated some friends because, again, it was all part of my growth as an officer. I went across the floor. I went from the engine, from the truck, I got promoted, and I went to the rescue, the same firehouse. And, the mistake I made was thinking that I'm the boss. I got to fix it all at once, I guess is the thing, and instead of choosing your battles. And, I believe that it takes 3 years in every rank to kind of figure out that rank. And it's just my number. It could take you 2 because you're smarter than me or whatever. But I just feel like even still as a captain, there's decisions I make around the firehouse now that I second guess a lot. And that's a little bit of a personality conflict with me too, is I'm kind of one of those like overthinkers, like much like brevity is not my strong suit. Overthinking things is a thing I do. So,
Yeah.
The biggest thing I would say to answer your question directly is early on as an officer, my first few months as an officer, I really thought I had to straighten everybody up and fix what I could fix right away. And too bad who I pissed off, and I think the people that I was working with knew me well enough to know that, this isn't normal, right? Like I'm having this weird, like figuring this out moment, and, but that's kind of the moment if I could do it over again, that was a mistake that I made. And, there's so much good stuff out there now, the Chase Sergeant stuff from Buddy the Boss and all that all the learning and reading that you can do to change, to make that next jump without making the mistakes I made. And again, these are mistakes, like finger quote mistakes, right? It was just stuff I said or did that I'm not proud of anymore. And it wasn't anything egregious. Just, hey man, Rob, what are you doing and wearing that hoodie today? You know what I mean? Like stuff like that when, if I never had to wear a pair of pants with a button on them again, I never would, you know what I mean? But it was just things like that. And
well, I mean, it's one of the things too. I think like you get the position, and especially, there was like, I know I can only speak for myself in that there was a lot of pressure to get it right because you didn't want to fuck up. And at the same time, like I had this, like I relied on some people from the outside that I reached out to try to do some mentorship with me when I realized that I was like treading water, and I was getting
Yeah.
tired because you don't know what you don't know, and there's certain things
Yeah.
you can get from like taking leadership classes, and I don't mean like an actual like a good like Tony Williams or like whatever like kind of like pump you up leadership. I mean like just the fire officer series.
Yeah.
They don't tell you how to make that communication level and connect with people
Yes.
and whatnot. So I know I felt this huge pressure to get it right. And
Yeah.
then I started having those missteps, like you said, like you wanted to fix all the things and do it because that pressure was there, man. Like it was.
Yeah. And that's exactly it. It was, the pressure to do something that you didn't really need to be done. You know what I mean? It was,
Yeah.
there's professionalism, and then there's, a lot of what I learned was, professionalism is a thing for sure, but I had to realize that it's more concerning what we do outside the building in terms of our professionalism than what we do inside. And honestly, that's when I started. I lived in this fire service bubble that Buffalo was the only place that existed. And then when when I got promoted is when I started to branch out. And that's when I started wanting to go to FDI. First year I went to FDIC was 2016. I started to meet you guys and some of the folks out there that do this stuff. I started reading the books. Every book I ever read was a tactics book until I'm like, all right, I got the tactics part down pretty much, but man, I got to figure out the human tactics, and that's when you learned about having expectations, but having your own expectations of yourself too, and tempering them, right? Like the balance between what I can live with and what I can't live with in terms of, I don't even want to say behavior, but you know what I mean? And that was really it for me when I first got promoted is when I started to branch out and I met, all you guys and I started to, do get into the, the reading and learning about this whole big fire service that exists in the world, not just in my little corner, and it was big for me to do that. And anyone sitting there listening that's at a job like mine where, you're not encouraged to, at the time, not encouraged necessarily to step outside your comfort zone, do it, man. If you're listening to this podcast, you're probably ahead of the game, honestly, but stuff like this was in its infancy 9-10 years ago, right? Like you couldn't log in and get a webinar once or twice a week from any of these, big speakers that if it costs you $10 or it's free,
I think just of YouTube as a leadership resource, like, listening to the TED Talks from Simon Sinek or other people that are in that category, right? And just how, from a leadership standpoint, like that information's out there, let alone how we can kind of curtail it to the fire service. And, and what you said, you said something just now, like for guys that are on jobs like mine, but like it's even jobs like mine that are, I can think right now I'm at 27 positions, right? We're not fully staffed, but like I'm making connections with other chiefs and deputy chiefs and assistant chiefs in similar sized departments because like I know that I am not doing everything correctly and I know I'm making mistakes, right? But like I was in Sioux Falls this past week and I got to meet a deputy chief or an assistant chief from a department that has almost a similar staffing model that I do. And like I was just happy to connect to somebody and be like, hey, are you having these just knowing that he's having some of the same situations that I am, I was like, all right, this is perfect.
Yeah, it's funny, right? Like that same circus, different clowns is a real thing,
Yeah.
And you talk about Simon Sinek, like one of his favorite quotes from him is, people don't buy what you do, care about what you do, care about why you do it, right? Like I'm screwing it up, but it's along that same lines. Like people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And that's kind of how I try to, I'm just going to do me and I'm going to do my best to always lead by example. And hopefully it shapes these folks instead of me, pointing a finger and by and large, it works in the sense that I've turned out, this is a terrible thing to say, but a lot of people that have worked for me have gone on to be great officers. And I take pride in that. And because whether they would have been or not, good firefighters generally become good officers. You know what I mean? Once
100%.
they really like bridge this gap we're talking about, and but you take pride in 5 years, 10 years later, 6 years later, I see a guy that promoted out of my crew when I was his captain. He promoted out, and he came up to me and he's like, "Man, Cap, I never gave you enough credit. I got to thank you for doing this, this, and this, because it changed the way I think about stuff." And like, it's a little bit of a, yeah, all right, awesome. It makes you feel good that you touch him. That means he's going to touch his crews going forward. And,
Right.
and something silly as when somebody on my crew gets promoted, I buy them their bars. I give them their lieutenant bars, and I just hand them, and I say, when you become captain, you give them to somebody, or when somebody promotes out of your shift, you give these to them. And it's just kind of a silly little, I certainly didn't invent it. Someone told me that they did the same thing. I'm like, I love that idea.
Yeah.
For $10, I go buy a set of lieutenant's bars and I give them to you. And I'm like, it's an honor to work with you. And if I'm here for you forever, and pass these on to someone that promotes under you,
Well, and I think that's so important, Sean, because that's what, like, we want to leave the fire service better than we found it. And it goes, I think the fire service is so much foundation building, because that's building the foundation for that officer as they get promoted, to know that we didn't forget about them, and we're now assigning them a task to pass on. So we're giving them a tradition to do. So it's huge, man. That's awesome.
And it's, it's hokey or whatever, but it's awesome. Like, and
yeah.
I'm sure somebody thought it was the coolest thing that's ever happened to him. And one of the guys is probably like, "That's so stupid, I don't care." But it doesn't matter to me. I did it. I do it. If any of the folks under me are going to promote, I'm going to do the same thing. And I'm going to continue to do it. And I always encourage my crews to promote out. Now, my crew right now is in a different kind of stage in their career. So 2 of the guys are staring at 20 years where they're probably just not going to promote now. They don't want to. They never wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
Another one's young. He's going to promote. And I'm there for him. And I offer him whatever assistance I have. I've taken a lot of tests. I've served as assessors for the assessment center companies. And that's all you can do is try. My old crew at Truck 7, before I left there, we used to have, we'd spend an hour or 2 a night, usually after the meal, and we'd go over stuff. And these folks were all studying to become lieutenants. At the same time, I had to study to become battalion chief. And several of them made it. A couple are still going to make it. And that's great, So hopefully that little bit, if this much of me, it's like the puzzle piece thing, you see, if this much of me stays in their brain and passes on to their people, and then so much of them passes on to their people, maybe, just maybe, we keep things getting better, improving,
Yeah, I think we do, and that's awesome. What's the difference? What separates a good company officer from a great company officer, in your opinion?
I think it's the little things, I suppose, right? Like there's a lot of good. It goes back to what we talked about before. There's a lot of people that are very good at this job, and that are going to be, because they're good firefighters, they're going to be good officers. And I think the small separation between good to great is that little extra step, like the little bit 1 degree more. I forget who said it, but it's like, at 212 degrees, water's just really fucking hot. But at 211 degrees, it's really hot. At 212, it boils and produces steam, and you can move a train, like somebody said that. It wasn't me. But don't sue me, whoever it was. But credit to, it might be Frank Fuscuso. It might have been from Step Up and Lead. But my point, like, you go that 1 degree extra, and if that's just checking in on their day off. Hey, I know your daughter had a big event at school. How'd that go? Or, hey, I'm going to Geneva in a couple of weeks. I'm going to giving a couple of guys are giving a lecture. You want to ride with me and just sit in on it for, and maybe pick up a couple of things. We'll grab lunch on the way back. Like, that little bit extra so they know that you're more than just their boss, you know. And that's a whole other fine line. Like, I'm your boss, I'm not your father, right? And some things, but I think the great ones are the people that, you know, every time you ring their phone, they're going to answer. You know what I mean? Like that kind of thing. You know, you give that 1 degree more. And
Yeah.
I think that's it. Like it's constant learning, constantly asking, evaluating what did you think went well? You know, can we versus job's done, clean your shit, get it back on the rig, let's go. You know what I mean? Like most times, I'd say 95% of the time we get done with a fire, first words out of my mouth in the rig are thanks guys, nice job. Even if we didn't do necessarily the greatest job,
Right.
nice job. We'll address the stuff that went wrong separately. But right now, hey, we did it. We're all here. Good job. Thank you. You know, and it's a very, very, very fine line. If, you know, great is a strong term. You know what I mean? When you're talking about, you know, good to great is what, you know.
Well, and it's subjective, right? You know, but I think you've because it's, you know, it's tough, but like I like that question just because it makes us think about, you know, that, you know, being in Buffalo, you've gone, you said it before, you've gone through these times where like the city had that freeze of promotions and salaries, and there was the review board and all these things that creates turmoil. People get into a rut. If somebody's in the fire service, whether they're in Buffalo or maybe they're somewhere elsewhere in the country, and they're in that, what advice do you have for them to reset their mindset and refocus on the job?
So we have to remember what we sign up for, you know. And it's, I think that whole statement, like it's not your emergency, is bullshit. You know what I mean? Like when you refocus and you block out the noise, you remember what matters. Not that long ago, 6 months ago, I was working overtime at Engine 2, and I'll circle back to your question, but this is going to answer it right for you.
Yeah.
We had a call, and a woman across the street happened to be a caretaker of the person that we got called for. And she walks right up to me and she's like, "Man, you're not retired yet?" And I looked at her and I had no idea who this woman was. And I said, "No, like what Jesus, no, give me a break. I just turned 50, for crying out loud." Like, and she's like, "You probably don't recognize my face, but you saved my life 10 years ago." And I'm like, "Oh my God, I feel terrible. Like, what do you mean?" And she was, you know, she told the story, and the story doesn't matter. The fact is, 10 years later, this lady came up to me on a call and remembered me and was like, "You made a difference." And like, so to block out the noise of the things that are beyond our control and focus on the things that are, like, provide the best service for the people that because they matter and they care. And Buffalo our call volume's probably up 10,000 calls because of the homelessness, because of the drugs, because of just the way it is. And it's no different than every big city, but if you make a difference in one person's life, it's worth it, you know. And so to talk about the noise and the nonsense and put that anger, like drive that anger into, you know, the anger and frustration you might have with the city or with the administration, and focus it into what we can control. And that's the product we put on the streets is I guess the answer to your question. And that's a legit thing we've had to talk about because we've been living it for the lion's share of my career. And, you know, it's hard, but it matters. Every time the story comes out where someone dropped by and they brought a pizza or they bought a pitcher or they brought a whatever, because, hey, you saved our house, or hey, you saved my life. Like, that's huge. Like, you can't put a pay raise on that. You know what I mean? And a lot of the pressure that comes with, you know, wage freezes and pay cuts and all that other stuff is felt. The guys and gals are feeling it at home too. I understand that. And that's just something that you just have to have that same conversation. Like, I don't talk to my wife about the bad stuff most of the time. I've said this,
right.
Anybody that's ever listened to a podcast I've done it. And it's not to patronize her. It's not to protect her. It's just, I know what she wants to hear. I'll tell her when we have a bad night, and I'll give her the 30,000-foot version. But man, when something good happens, you better believe that I'm all in, all the details, and I'm talking with my hands like I do, and she's rolling her eyes because I can't just tell a story quick and move on. But that's what you have to do, is you have to focus on what really matters is the people that are calling for our help.
Awesome. On the training side of things, and I know that people who know you know that you're about creating training opportunities. What's an example of how you can create training opportunities, especially when you're like working in a busy house or you have a busy shift?
You have to take every opportunity you can get. If you're in a building and you're waiting, I just did it yesterday, as a matter of fact. We were at a call, we were waiting for the ambulance. The patient was okay, just kind of waiting for transport. I took an opportunity. I had the new guys, and I'm looking at the standpipe, and I'm like, hey, what class standpipe system is that? It was that simple. And they're like, because we still have in buildings like class 2 and 3 standpipe systems, but none of them are functional. You know what I mean? Where there's no buildings. If the buildings that still have, that cotton freaking hose in them is just decoration now, but they're still there.
Yeah.
Because so many buildings. So you take the opportunity to learn while you're working. You walk into a house and, again, if it's an EMS call, if it's an investigate gas, if it's a smells and bells, Rob, how many windows were on the second floor of this house as we walked in? And almost every time, the first time I ask you, you're like, oh, I don't know. But now you know that I might ask you this question, so you're going to look every time, and that teaches you how to get the bigger picture. Something as simple as with a new driver, hey, what street are we on right now? Because you're just on autopilot. Oh, I know I make this right, and I make another left, and I'm back at the firehouse. What's the name of this street? Like little things like that, you just create training opportunities as they present themselves. We've had a record cold. I mean, the whole country has, but a couple weeks back it was freezing, and I'm like, I can't go out. We can't go out and stretch lines. We can, but you know what I mean? You got to call in to have the water department drain the hydrants, all that stuff.
Yeah.
So we took.
Listen, when someone from Buffalo is saying that it might be too cold to go out and stretch lines, I'm taking that as it's pretty freaking cold.
It was cold. And it wasn't just me being like cold, lazy cold. It was freaking cold, like, 2-3 degrees. But, so what we did was we just turned it into a firehouse lesson. I pulled out the RIT pack out of the truck, went over the RIT pack quick. Then I took the couple rookies over and just reviewed some inside engine ops. And it's just as simple as asking questions. Okay, here's the scenario. That house right there, we're stretching 5 lengths to the second floor. What's your engine pressure? What do you got to set it at? What's your pump going to be set at? What do you think 4 lengths, 5 lengths based on the setback? Like just questions and answers, and it doesn't have to be long. I tell the guys all the time, I need like 90 minutes of your day.
Right.
I need 90 minutes of the 24. To just go over some stuff just to get better. If it's nothing else, let's go, hey, like our first day Friday, we're going to definitely go over to the house they had yesterday, the fire that they had yesterday, and just check it out and see what we can learn from that. It's simple stuff that doesn't require any out of service time. I don't have to throw a ladder or hook up a hose. I can just go, because even building walkthroughs, you know how that is. Like we can't necessarily just show up and be like, hey, I want to walk through your building. So stuff like that, simple little questions while you're on calls. Once the situation's under control, like talk about building construction types, talk about, the stairs. This building has scissor stairs. This one doesn't. Talk about wet versus dry standpipes, like anything that you can do while you're on calls, or you can do in the firehouse, or you can do outside of the firehouse, but stay in service is simple. We have a rule with no more than 5 companies can be out of service at a time. And there's so much training going on, be it from our special operations division, be it from our training division, that you get to 5 companies like that.
Right.
And I want to go throw ladders, or I want to throw the aerial up, and I can't. So I have to get creative. And it's stuff I've learned is you just pick a building and we're going to talk about it. We might just, even if we walk the basement and the first floor of a building just to get an idea of the layout, it's simple, it's easy, and we're only, that's why we got those expensive portable radios, so that we don't necessarily need to be 10 toes up in the recliner waiting for a call, so but it seems to work, and it keeps, with younger firefighters, it keeps them engaged, because they're like, oh, Cap's going to ask me a question anytime now, so I'm always going to be, as they're walking into buildings, they're looking at everything, which way did that door swing. In the big picture, that building's on fire, it doesn't matter, right? But it's a question to see if they're paying attention, if they're sizing up their environment, and you just drop those questions on them. Now, my crew, they roll their eyes when I ask them questions like that, especially in the middle of the night. But, but they'll answer them. But, it's different. They've been around a while, but there's some extremes. There's people that want to stretch lines at 2 a.m. on calls. Like, I think that's a little bit overkill, to be honest with you.
I'm not disagreeing with you there. 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm ready to go back to bed.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. Like, if there's a teachable moment, use it.
Yeah.
And I mean moment. Like on the ride back to the firehouse, hey, did you notice X, Y, and Z that was set up at that building? Oh, you didn't notice? Okay, great. Next shift, we'll go take a ride over. I'll show you what I'm talking about. Not, hey, we're going to, because then it blurs the line between punishment and training. If I'm making you stretch lines at 2:30 in the morning, you assume I'm pissed off at you about something.
Right. In all the training that you've done, whether it's working outside the fire department as a state instructor, what fireground skill do you think is the most undertrained but absolutely critical that the fire service is kind of grappling with?
I think still that stretching is the thing that gets screwed up the most, and okay. I don't think that it's due to lack of training. I just think that it's sort of like we don't need to reinvent the wheel. The way you stretch lines down Poughkeepsie Way or Fairview is going to be different than the way we do, because your buildings are different, your setbacks are different, your hose lays are different. I feel like that is what everything you look on social media, there's a million unbelievable training sites and groups and pages on stretching, and yet it seems to be what gets screwed up the most is making that initial stretch and
water in the line.
Water into we had a fire the other night on my platoon, and there was a lack of communication between the attack pumper and the feed pumper, and it was chaos for 5 minutes. And luckily we were able to adjust, and we didn't lose the whole house. But the stretching gets to be too complicated. Find a hose load that works for you, and practice with it. We don't use a Minuteman. We just have a straight up flat load on our rigs. We don't have the Minuteman. We don't have any of these other whatever. Not because they're wrong, just because this is what works. And if you were an expert and you came here and you taught me, maybe we could do it. But I just feel like too many people try to be like other places. You have to do what works for your department, for your staffing, for your water system, the water supply if you're doing tankers or if you have hydrant water. I just feel like that is, and not only obviously the whole cliche, like the first line thing, like that's the most important thing. And that's the thing that seems to get screwed up the most. Yeah. People, there's too many variables when you talk about forced entry, you talk about ladders. Some people don't go up top. They don't go to do roof work. So that's not, some people, I can teach you how to force a door until I encounter a door that's got, a grizzly bear behind it. You know what I mean? Like, right. So the thing that happens at every single fire that I think gets screwed up most of the time is the initial stretch. And maybe even not the stretch, but the selection, the hose line selection, hose line placement. In Buffalo, our biggest thing is front door, side door. Sometimes people take the front door because it's right there and it's gaping wide open, and it works. Sometimes making that front door, you're wasting 2 lengths of hose going through one floor just to get to the next floor, So it's like size up and hose selection and placement are what I think is the biggest problem that we encounter. And that from the things the reports I read and the conversations I have with people, that seems to be, you can never train enough on putting hose on the ground. And
Right.
there's something to be said about doing it in a real world environment. You know, it's easy to stretch lines through cones in the parking lot. I get all that. But I think like making the stretches and getting water to that line, getting water to the tip. We had a fire in December where we had a lot of problems. We were all in position upstairs waiting to make a push in the attic, and we just waited and waited and waited. And we didn't get water for a long time, and ultimately we lost it. We had to bail out and go defensive on that fire. And 5 days before Christmas, you know, it was terrible. So.
Yeah. Is there a fireground tactic or mindset shift that you think more firefighters need to adopt in today's day and age?
Well, speaking from what I can speak to around here is this, you know, the like go all the time, you know, like the you know, like slow down to go fast type of thing, where once we get there and we're, you know, if the engine's in front of me and I'm helping the engine, and we're trying to make the second floor, make the attic, and people behind me are like, let's go. Well, you know, like the mindset is, we're not standing here for our health. You know, we're doing the best we can to get up here. But if we go too fast, that's when people get burned. And then we come bailing out, and then we lose the building, you know, like now we send 29 people on our initial assignment, right? More than you have
right
on duty, right? So it's different, you know, but that's the one thing, like everything. We had a high-rise fire recently, and I was taking a firefighter who was getting low on air out. I'm like, listen, man, you got to get out. He's like, no, Cap, I'm good. I'm like, listen, it's not a house. Like, you're not going to get outside in the hallway and be able to doff your mask and be good to go. You got to get all the way to one of the stairways. Let me help you. Well, crews are coming in at the same time we're trying to go out, and we're like, it's like literally like two fat guys in a hallway trying to get by. And like the desire to want to do is awesome. I'm never going to criticize someone that wants to get in there and put in the work, but use your brain and think for a second. People are coming out of the area that I'm trying to go into. Maybe they're coming out for a reason, you know? So like, just think it through. Think about what's happening in the whole scenario versus just in your brain. I'm assigned to the rescue company. My job is to get above the fire, right? Get it. Got it. And I'm going to let you go there as soon as I can get out of your way, because our job is to get on this floor and contain that fire so you can get up there and check for extension. You know what I mean? Like that. And that's not a criticism of any, it's not a specific story. I just use the rescue in Buffalo's job is usually get above the fire and check things out, do recon stuff. But that whole thing is understanding everybody's role is what, it's not just your role, you know, because the engine's having it not making a push as fast as you think doesn't mean they're afraid. It means that something's going wrong. Either they're waiting for the roof to get open if they're going to make that push in the attic, or they're waiting for whatever it is. They're cooling the space before they advance, whatever, all the stuff you're supposed to do. If you understand the job, you'll understand why they're doing it.
Right.
So just take it easy for a second. You know what I mean?
Kind of shifting gears a little bit, you know, from a, like more of a personal development side of it. Have there been times in your career where you've had to kind of take that step back and reset your mindset on the job? And if so, how'd you do it?
Yeah, actually, there was one time in particular, 2011. I was next up for lieutenant in 2011 for like 8 months. I was next on the list, and we were still dealing with the control board, and we were still dealing with politics. There's always politics in, you know, every department, especially in our state, you know, but, and I was next out. There was eight openings, and I was next. And now 2011, I had 13-ish years on, and I had been working at busy companies, and I felt like I was really ready to go. And also I had, 4 children that needed, most of my kids now are self-sufficient. But so anyways, because of no other reason than somebody behind me on the list the mayor didn't like, none of us got promoted. Now, nobody will ever admit that, obviously, but my point was that I instantly was like, F this, I'm done. I told my boss and my crew, I'm like, I'm out sick till further notice. This is nonsense. I'm taking my ball and going home. They don't promoted me. And, seriously, and they were all like, okay, cool, see ya. No more details, right? But, like, I got home and I was stressed and I was angry and I was upset. And, it's a lot of money, too. Forget about the fact that it's the next step of my career. It's a decent pay raise, right? And so I kind of wallowed in it for a little while. And I kind of one day, my wife was like, well, you can sit here and sulk or you can just move on, right? Like, there's absolutely nothing I could do about it. The list died. I had to, basically I had to have this come to Jesus meeting with myself and say, all right, you're either going to do it or you're not. And that's when luckily I'd signed up for the next exam already. So I buckled down, I studied, I worked hard, I got promoted off of that list. And I kind of, I could have gone either way right then. I feel like if I didn't have the support system at home, I might have just went right off the rails. And instead, like I said, I realized that, and I can't think of it. My wife just told me about this awesome book, but she basically is, you can control what you can control. And, you got to learn how to move on from the things that are out of your control. And, dirty politics are out of my control and I don't have to like it. Unfortunately, I fell victim to it. And, so it was a good lesson for me that, and it changed my whole mindset about everything in life. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes to a fault, because there's so much, I literally, all the stuff going on in the world now, and my wife's talking about it, I'm like, nothing I can do about it, so why am I going to stress about it? And so it helped me, looking back at how aggravated and how pissed off I was, it actually helped shape the rest of my whole life and the way I raised my kids, the way I did my job. And I think that was the turning point in terms of, I could have really truly just became one of those guys that I'm just going to show up, I'm going to do my job, I'm going to leave. And luckily, I again, my rational brain kicked in, and I just, quitted pouting and moved on, and here I am.
So if you had a bit of advice for a firefighter who's questioning their career and their purpose in the fire service, what would you want to tell them?
I want to tell him or her that you'll find your place. You may be in a slower spot than you want to be in right now. You may not be up for promotion. You may not be in the department you want to be in right now, but it'll work out for you. If you keep working and you keep reading and listening to podcasts and doing all the things that are good, you'll find your spot. You'll find out where you want to be, and you find out where you belong. And, some of it is, maybe it's not the department you're in even. Maybe you need a change of scenery. How many people in our world, that the folks we know, didn't really start to blossom until they left the situation they were in and moved on?
Yeah.
Bloom where you're planted type of thing is great unless you have a choice to bloom somewhere else. You know what I mean? If you can try and try and try. And I go back to, I did a round table at Firehouse Expo or one of them, and we laid this all out, and this guy grabs the mic and asks this question, and he just lays out this nasty politics, and negativity and constant whatever that's going on to him specifically in his job. And I literally am like sitting there with two other people. I'm like, you guys like pass the mic. And I just looked at this poor guy and I'm like, I can't say anything to you, but I'm sorry you're dealing with all that. And I said, he was an older guy in terms of, when I say older, he struck me as someone that probably is planted a seed. You know what I mean? He's got family, he's got roots. So the moving on might not have been an ideal, a real option for him. But I kind of said the same thing. I said, if you could explore other opportunities, I really think you would, because it sounds like to me he exhausted everything, and it was like crushed my soul. Like it was one of those, like, you think you got problems, listen to this poor guy, and,
right.
But find your way, keep pushing, don't let the negativity get to you. That's my advice. Like, and if reach out to people that can, I don't have all the answers, but I'll sure give you the wrong ones if you want. Just DM me or do whatever, and it's hard because we've all dealt with it at some point, and you're gonna deal with it on different scales throughout your whole career, depending on what place you're in your career. Just like seasons in life, you have seasons of your career. Like I'm sitting here now, next out for battalion chief. Nothing I could do about it. I need a chief to retire, and if they do, they do. If they don't, I gotta take the next test if I want to. 10 years ago, I'd be bashing my head against the wall about it. And, you just have to roll with the punches and constantly keep improving themselves, and they'll find out they'll land where they're supposed to.
Looking ahead, is there, like, what's one of the things you still want to accomplish in the fire service while you still have time?
That's an interesting question. Well, I mean, obviously the goal has been for some time is to make the rank of chief. So I want that. And I'm next, like I said, I'm next out. We have just about a year left, so I should make it. But like, that's kind of, is it going to define me? No, you know what I mean? But that's kind of always been the goal. And I think it might have been like my wife's goal more than mine, because she wants me to stop, climbing onto roofs and shit like that. But I don't know if, I feel like in terms of accomplishments, like I just want somebody in 10 years to say, hey, I remember working for that Eagen guy and he told me this one time. Or, like, that's all that matters, is if your legacy lives on and it's a positive one. Not everybody's going to like me, and I don't care. Like, I'm at that, like, peaceful dad situation, right? I'm 50 now. My kids and my small circle and my family are what really matters to me. You know what I mean? And I feel like once you can come to peace with that, I have a group of friends and I have a group of people that I know will take my phone call, but I don't need to be sitting out, all night long, hooting and hollering to feel like I'm accepted. Like, I've done what I've done. And I feel like if you leave a positive legacy, like, I guess that's the simplest answer, is I want to leave a legacy within the department that, when people speak of me in 20 years, they speak well. You know what I mean? In terms of, he did it. He did the job. He tried to always make people better. Some people I'm sure don't like me. I don't care. People don't like me because I do stuff like this. You know what I mean? Because I write articles, or I teach classes, or I talk on podcasts. But again, like, we have an opportunity. We work in one of the busiest departments in the Northeast. We have opportunities to share what we've learned, good and bad. And I feel like it's our obligation to,
Yeah, that's you took the words right out of my mouth there. So that's because I think of that, idea of sharing knowledge and being able to really put it out there, because there's mistakes, good or bad, or there's lessons that we've learned, and it's just so pivotal. I mean, everybody's got. I think it was Rich Stacks said something to me about, it's similar, like, you got something to bring to the table, because I was like very intimidated, stepping in to help out at Joey D one year when they were going through some stuff with the instructors and everything else because of, politics and whatnot. And
ego, you could say it because of ego.
yeah, but I mean, either way, I was going to be put in this position. And I was like, and it is, yeah. So,
no, it's facts. It's true, 100%.
We've been going on for about an hour and 20 minutes now. I can't believe that. So in closing, where can people find your work, your training programs, or reach out if they want to connect with you?
So the best avenue for me now is just if you want to reach out, I'm on Instagram. It's just my name, Sean Eagan. I did in the January issue of Firehouse. I had an article. My friend Pete Matthews asked me if I would pick up and write. So I wrote on the age-old topic of searching vacant properties or not. So if you get on firehouse.com, there's some of my podcasts, some of my links of articles I've written. If you're local to Western New York, on the 22nd, we'll be at Geneva. Me and two other guys from our job are going to be in Geneva for their training morning. It's Saturday morning. I say this to you, and I don't know if it's like an open to the public thing or how much it costs or whatever, but if you want to reach out, check it out, the Geneva Fire Training Days. I'm bringing a current chief and a retired chief, and one's going to be talking about engine ops, one's going to be talking leadership. I'm going to do some truck stuff, and then we're going to have a little round table. But I do have Facebook, but full disclosure, like I kind of been dialing back my Facebook in terms of if I've never had a face-to-face conversation with you, I don't want you seeing pictures of my wife and kids type of thing, And so Instagram is the best method. Rob, you can put my email in the show notes if they want.
Okay.
I'm really easy to get a hold of, but like I said, mostly in terms of social media stuff is Instagram, and but I don't have my own like website or anything like that, I did not put in for FDIC last year, so I'm not going to be there this year. Just decision I made, and it's kind of what we talked about earlier, right? I didn't put in for it this year, and it's an amazing opportunity for people that get the opportunity to go. I'm 100%. I'm not against it. I'm not mad at them. I just didn't do it this year. But if you can get out there, the networking, the people, that's where I met Rob and Jeremy and the guys, and they, our first meeting was kind of like, who the hell is this guy? And then 2 hours later, we were drinking beers together, but yeah, I'm out there on mostly, like I said, look it up on Instagram. It's just my name. It's just at Sean Eagan. And if you DM me or whatever, I'll get back to you, or you can email me.
Well, Sean, hang out for a minute here, but thank you for coming on the podcast today and sorry to ambush you with the questions there, but you did a pretty good job.
It's fun. It makes me think. I'm just messing with you anyways, All
right, everybody, this is Rob, Frontline Mindset with Sean Eagan, Buffalo Fire Department. Thank you, Captain Eagan, for coming on today. I appreciate you. We will catch you guys out there. Be safe, and we'll see you next time.
National Fire Radio.